Welcome to Magic Arcanum. I'm Ryan Gomez. Behind the scenes is Nicole Burdick, and we're so glad you're here because it's story time. Today, we're doing another Mustache Makeover where I take a pre-constructed deck from Magic's history and update it to work in Standard. Our deck this time comes from Urza's Saga. It was released in October of 1998, and it is called Special Delivery. Special Delivery was an aggressive red and green deck that used the Echo mechanic to attack hard and fast, but it could find itself running out of steam in the hands of an inexperienced pilot. Before we get into the deck, we're going to hop over to Into the AM and do our pick-a-pack. This video is sponsored by Into the AM, where you can find amazing graphic tees like the one I'm wearing here. It is super cool, but there are so many great designs, it is hard to pick a favorite. That's why we're going to pick a whole pack. By putting 3 or more shirts together in our order, we get a discount, and that's before we apply my special promo code. Alright, so we're going to start by looking at some of their new designs. They get new stuff all the time at Into the AM. It is pretty crazy. Like this neon Ronin guy, he's got some attitude. I like that one quite a bit. That's a fun one. But you know what? I'm feeling pretty out of this world today. So how about Saturn Return? Yeah, I like this guy. It's got a very epic feeling to it. Let's toss one of these in our cart. All right, we got space covered. Can we find something a little more down to earth? Ooh, here we go. High Tide. That is literally the name of a Magic card, so we got to get that one. And add to cart. Looking for one more fun one. What do we got? I think our final pick is going to be Free Flow. I like this one. It's got a really cool kind of prismatic color thing going on here on the white background. Good bit of nature, good bit of adventuring. I really like it. Let's throw that in the cart as well. All right, so that fills our pack with 3 awesome shirts. We got Free Flow, High Tide, Saturn Return. We got all 3 in there together, so they have a built-in discount for being a pack. But I'm going to add my promo code, which is Magic Arcanum, which is going to take another 10% off of that. And boom, just like that, we saved enough to buy ourselves a booster pack at our local game store. Thanks again to Into the AM for sponsoring today's Mustache Makeover, and I invite you to give yourself a little makeover as well by visiting them using my link down below and entering promo code Magic Arcanum when you check out. Okay, now let's take a look at Special Delivery as it would have appeared on game store shelves back in 1998. So this deck, which would have cost 10 or 12 bucks and was designed mostly for new players, came with 2 rares, a worm and a very expensive board wipe. The worm looks cool. It's a 6/6 for 4 with trample, but you'll note that when it comes into play, your opponent can just sacrifice a land to make you put it back on top of your deck. And that board wipe makes everybody sacrifice 4 lands when you play it. The rest of the cards in here used Echo, which basically gave you an overstated creature, but you had to pay its cost again next turn, or you would have to sacrifice it. This led to a very aggressive game plan where you had to pick between repaying for a body or throwing it away to summon something even bigger. I mean, art aside, would you pay 2 for a 2/2 with haste and then pay for it again the following turn? Probably not. Fortunately, the core idea of this deck is definitely something that we can bring into Standard for today's Mustache Makeover. And so here we are with Special Delivery 2K23. I was even able to keep the worm, and this one is arguably better. It costs 1 more mana, but it can't be put back on top of your own deck. And as for the board wipe, well, I went with the tried and true Burn Down the House, which doesn't ask anyone to sacrifice lands, but it can also be used to create 3 of these very dangerous 1/1 devil tokens in a pinch. I also did sneak 1 more rare in here, even though I was trying to mimic the original list as close as possible, and that is this guy, Evolved Spinoderm. He's very similar to a lot of those Echo creatures because he has great stats for his initial cost, but he will also not survive very many turns, so it felt like a good way to preserve the feeling of the original deck while giving it a modern twist. The rest of the supporting creatures here actually use oil counters to show off that mechanic rather than showing off Echo. So we have things like Evolving Adaptive that will get bigger over time, and Magmatic Sprinter as our Goblin War Buggy replacement. And just like the deck from Urza's Saga, this one burns bright, but probably not for long. Will it be able to echo the success of its ancestor and help us climb the rankings in Standard? Let's find out. Okay, game 1 with special delivery 2K23. We've got both of our colors and some early cheap stuff to play. I think we can keep this. It doesn't help that our opponent goes first, though, but we'll do what we can. Of course, if our opponent's going to just play a plains and then pass, I guess that's actually fine. We'll just have a forest and nothing to do ourselves, but that's all right. So I really want to try and keep the aggressive theme of the original deck, and again, while we don't have echo creatures, we do have a lot of stuff that is statted pretty good for its cost. One thing you can say about Magic over the years is that the creatures just have gotten better in general, to the point where, you know, we don't have to worry quite as much about echo or cumulative upkeep or all these other penalties and taxes that used to be attached to creatures. We just get to play good bodies now and let them do the work. All right, opponent has Wedding Announcement and a Valiant Veteran, so I'm not sure if they're on like a soldier, human kind of tribal thing here. I'm not sure what's going on. We did pack a Canker Bloom, which we can use to destroy the opponent's Wedding Announcement if we want to. Or we could drop our Iconoclast and kick it, and it's going to be a 4/3 with Trample and Haste. I think that's actually pretty good. So now we get to attack for as much as 7 on turn 3, and they're going to trade off the token for the Requisitioner, but that's fine. It's going to leave behind a treasure token for us. Opponent down to 16. They took the full hit from the Iconoclast. They didn't want to give up their Veteran. Opponent with a green and white, passing back with double white. Or are we going to play something second main here? No play, so this is probably Wandering Emperor. Which I think I'm okay with, because if we keep up a Tamiyo's safekeeping here, we could really get him. So that's what I'm going to try to do. I'm just going to swing. I mean, that's what this deck is designed to do. All right. Hitting you for 7, opponent. You're going to try to Wandering Emperor someone, I bet. Could be wrong. Opponent doing the math. Realizing they're about to take a ton of damage. Yeah, the original deck didn't really have anything quite like Tamiyo's safekeeping. It had a pump spell that gave 2 creatures +2/+2, I think, or something like that. But in this case, I really like the insurance that it gives us against something like Wandering Emperor. I guess we could just pass back. I mean, we could have continued to develop our board there. I don't want to overextend into like a board wipe of any sort, though. All right, opponent at 9 with 5 lands in play. And they spend another turn doing nothing. They just flip their Wedding Announcement. Okay. We pick up a second Canker Bloom. Ooh, I kind of like using that to destroy their wedding festivity. So we'll put that down now. We can even throw Audacity on one of our Iconoclasts. Try to get in some extra points of damage. So the original deck did have a similar enchantment to Audacity. It wasn't Rancor, although it could have been. That would have been great for that deck. And I'm trying to remember what it was. I guess it doesn't super matter, but there were a few auras in the original deck to buff up our creatures, so we're keeping that same feeling. All right, opponent lines up. Blocks on everybody. We are going to spend our red and destroy the wedding festivity after blocks are set. This is going to shrink everyone back down. I think our guys still end up dead, but more damage now tramples through, and that's really what we're after here. Although we could actually make somebody indestructible if we truly want. So is it worth keeping, for example, our Iconoclast alive here? So let's see, one's going to trample through, and then 3 more. So we're taking 4 damage on them, but we won't have a board left afterwards. I guess we're going to try to protect this guy, just because I want to keep something around if I can. Although now, if they do have Wandering Emperor, I'm in big trouble. I would be impressed if they waited this long to play it. Alright, Valorous Stance. So we're just going to trade indestructible spells. That's okay. They still go down to 5, and we've got a 5-2 with Trample left. Opponent drops another land. Borrowed Time to exile our creature. Audacity goes to the graveyard, and we get to pick up another card. Alright, so we just have 4 lands. So we could Cankerbloom and threaten to pop that Borrowed Time. I also like just playing out double Wary Thespians. These guys are pretty great. So again, a 3-1 for 2, kind of overstated. There is a burn spell, very similar to one that would have been in the original deck. I think they had Heat Ray, and so we're doing Flame Discharge, a very similar X damage spell. I mean, I guess that's worth keeping on top. And since I already know what's going to be there, I don't need to play the second Thespian. I don't need to Surveil again. So we'll just kind of try to go wide enough to get around this Valiant Veteran, although we can also just burn it out next turn and maybe attack for lethal. Alright, I think we're going to be trying to burn out something else. Alright, so we don't have any modified creatures right now, so the most that this can do is 3 damage. I could give something +2/+2 until end of turn. That would let it trade with Myrel. Yeah, we'll see if the opponent takes that. Okay, so they are offering trade here, and if we free from flesh, I guess we'll upgrade our Thespian into a 5/3. So now board's empty. We get to Surveil again. We don't need another land, but we get to deploy another threat. And Surveil again. And a Braid might help, might not. I don't love it. But we'll keep it. In case they do play another creature of some sort, we might want to just get it out of the way. Alright, pretty close game. I mean, considering it's 20-5. But so far, this deck's doing exactly what we wanted. It's being aggressive, it's hitting hard. Alright, so we do have an Abrade and a Flame Discharge, so we could pick off both of these 1/1s and get our opponent down to 2. That's spending 2 cards, though, on 2 tokens. I don't love that. I think I'd rather just attack. They're going to block and trade, but we'll get another Surveil off of our Thespian, which helps us set up our next turn. And we don't need another mountain down there. Alright, opponent is just flooding out on lands, and they're going really wide with their tokens. We need to find something that can punch through this. We need a trampling Iconoclast again. I think I'm just going to pick off this Cavalier while I can. And if they go to protect it with the last card in their hand, then that would be great, because then we get to kill it for sure with Flame Discharge. Okay. So opponent's still sitting pretty behind 2 tokens, but we have plenty of life and plenty of hasty boys. They're going to flash in Rescue Retriever, a 5-mana 3/3. When it enters the battlefield, put a 1/1 counter on each other soldier you control. Prevent all damage it would be dealt to other attacking soldiers. Okay, so they're just going to turn their 1/1 into a 2/2. And we find Kami's Flare. 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, also 2 damage to that permanence controller if you control a modified creature. So is it worth holding out to find a modified creature, or do I just want to get the retriever out of here now? I mean, I guess he did his thing, but I'm just going to burn that while I can. And alright, so now it's just kind of a battle of top decks here, which our deck is not great at. They found an Adeline. That's a problem. Ugh. And do they have enough to use this out of the graveyard? So Valiant Veteran, you can pay 5 and exile it to put a 1/1 counter on each soldier you control. Adeline doesn't get that because she's a knight. But now they're hitting us for 6. 7. Alright, don't really know what we can hope to draw here. Furnace isn't going to do it. I think we will get one of these tokens out of here while we can and limit the amount of damage we're taking. So let's see, it's right now it's 7. When Adeline attacks, she's going to make another 1/1, so that's going to actually add 2 more power to the board, so that's 9. Going to bring us to 2. Alright, so they leave back 1 token, so we're down to 3. And we pick up Hammerhand. Enchanted creature can't... or excuse me. When it enters the battlefield, target creature can't block. Well, I guess we can try to redeem our Furnace and see if we can find anything better here. We pick up Audacity. Alright, we do not win against the green and white tokens soldiers. That is unfortunate, but those are the breaks. When you play a really aggressive deck, you get them down to 5 and you just can't close it out sometimes. So we'll have to try again. Okay, special delivery 2K23. Here we go. We got a forest and an evolving adaptive. I like it. It's a good opening play. So this guy is interesting. He's a 0/0, but he comes in with an oil counter on it, and he gets +1/+1 for each oil counter on it. And whenever another creature enters the battlefield under our control, if that creature has greater power or toughness, we get to add an oil counter, which basically adds power. Where this guy gets really cool is if you free him from flesh, which we will do right now while our opponent can't counter it. So he gets +2/+2 till end of turn and 2 more oil counters. So we turned him into a 5/5 on turn 2. And then he gets to keep those counters, so now he's permanently a 3/3. Opponent with Ledger Shredder, so they're on like the blue, probably mono blue spells and Delver and stuff like that. I think we can start by attacking here and see what our opponent wants to do. I don't imagine they're going to block, but you never know. I like they got the Jace sleeves and everything. All right, so we'll let them take that. I think we're going to use our Play with Fire on their Delver while they can't protect it with like a Spell Pierce or anything. And then we don't really have any other use for our mana, so Autonomous Furnace. The original deck had a couple of cycling lands in it. Those don't exist in Standard, so the closest I was able to come were the Sphere lands, which can be sacrificed to draw a card at the downside of coming in tapped, but the cycling lands also came into play tapped, so pretty much the same thing, just the tempo is a little bit different. All right, what we really need to find is another green source so we can play our Spinoderm. And opponent has stunned our Evolving Adaptive. And with a second spell being cast, they also get Ledger Shredder's conniving ability. Good for them. Opponent decides to ditch a Consider. So now they are back on board with a Delver and a Ledger Shredder. We find another green. All right, well, let's get this guy out while we can. He's going to actually even make our evolving guy even bigger. And now we've got a 5/5 with hexproof, so they can't mess with that for this turn. And at the beginning of our upkeep, we have to remove an oil counter from it. And we've picked up Defiler of Vigor. We found our worm. I think we're going to just start with attacking. Opponent is calling for the good game already. What does that mean? Alright, they're giving up a Delver. Okay. We'll try and drop Defiler here. I would not be surprised to see this get met with a counterspell. Unfortunate, but that's what happens. Alright, still have two very good threats on board. They just have a Ledger Shredder and only 2 cards left in hand. 1 card left in hand, but it's a draw spell, so lots of cards in hand. We're just finding lands. I think we will cash in our Furnace. More lands, okay. Well, get in there for 5. 1 down to 7, and now next turn we get to untap with everybody. This is probably about where they drop Tolarian Terror or something. Okay, or All-Seeing Arbiter. That's one you don't see very often. 5/4 with flying. When it enters the battlefield or attacks, draw 2, then discard a card. Whenever you discard a card, target creature an opponent controls gets -X/-0 till your next turn, where X is the number of different mana values. So they have, what, 4 different values? So they gave us, oof, big ouch. Alright. Well, I think it is still worth attacking here with both of these guys. I mean, they can just eat the Spinoderm if they want to. But it's going to die next turn when we take that last oil counter off anyway. They take the hit, go down to 3. So we're going to play our Trampling Giant Cindermaw. This is just another overstated guy, which probably would have had Echo or something on him back in the day. But now he's just a 3-mana 4/3 with Trample, and he shuts down life gain. I think that's pretty great. Doesn't do a lot for us here, but... Alright, so unfortunately our opponent's toughness is now getting out of range for most of our burn and most of our own creatures. And they're able to diminish our Cindermaw and bounce our adaptive. This hurts. Ouch. Alright, so once again, our very fast deck was not quite fast enough. I thought we had a good chance at slipping under a mono blue control deck, but I guess not. Alright, Magmatic Sprinter. Interesting, interesting. Can we get them here? I mean, I guess they're going to get to connive again, but... not much I can do about that. So Sprinter will grow our adaptive. And now we have to decide, do we put the 2 oil counters... I guess they go on the adaptive, right? And we could attack with the Sprinter, but he's just going to get chewed up by the Ledger Shredder. So I think we just pass. And see if we can find a way to dig ourselves out of this one. No attack, which means the Sprinter's going to be returned to our hand. And our opponent bounces our guy once again. So they are pretty well set up here. They have a full grip of cards. And with Lear, they now get access to a whole bunch of options again. So can we find a way to squeak in 3 damage? We are so close. Both games, so close. And we're doing this on just like 2 rares, mind you. I feel like this deck could be a lot better, but I was trying to keep it similar to the original theme deck. That's the whole point of Mustache Makeover. Just take what was on the shelf in 1998, give it a fresh coat of paint, and see how well we can do with that. So they know that they are safe behind a 3/4 because we have at most a 3/2. And we are dead to their flyers next turn, so... good game, opponent. You got this one. We're gonna have to try again. Alright, we're taking one more shot with Special Delivery 2K23. We've got our colors, we've got a critter. I think we can keep it. We're even going first. Maybe that'll help. Unfortunately, we're going to have to open with a tapped land, but that's fine. We didn't really have any turn 1 play anyway. Opponent answers back with their own tapped land. Okay, so we can either go with the 3-2 Cankerbloom or the 3-1 Requisitioner. I kind of like keeping him available to blitz maybe next turn. And now next turn. Okay, okay. Do we blitz and go for 6? We're up against a 4-color deck. They've got white, green, red, and black all available. Interesting. I guess we're going to try to Audacity this and just hit hard. They don't seem to have any removal. Alright, they take the full 5. I think we'll just wait and keep that Requisitioner. If they play something, we can flare it, or maybe we'll just end step, play with fire. Alright, so we control a modified creature. Our Cankerbloom has an enchantment on it, so Kami's Flare is going to do 3 damage to Gwenna, and then another 2 to the face. That's pretty good. And now, I think I like taking the Blitz here while they have no way to interact with us. We just get to hit for 8. Opponent down to 5, and we're holding Play with Fire. Do we just use that now too? Put them to 3? Hasty Iconoclast, I like that. Alright, we have to give up our Requisitioner, but we get to draw that card. And so if they don't really have a good play here, we have a couple of trampling hasty boys. Alright, so they're going to destroy our Cankerbloom, which is okay, because when Audacity falls, we get to draw a card, and Airtie lets us draw a card, so we now have all the cards. So if we kick the Iconoclast, he will be a 4-3 with Trample, which means 2 will get through. Opponent will go to 1. Our Flame Discharge only works on creatures or planeswalkers. And since we don't have a modified creature, we don't get the free extra bit out of it. We could just redeem this for 2. Oh no, we could just kill Airtie. That's fine. We just make X2. We have the treasure. We're good. He's gone, and now we get to attack for 4. We did it. We got there. Special delivery. Finally got 1 win. So we got 1 out of 3. But I'm feeling like a bonus game is in order. Let's do 1 more and see what happens on game 4. Once more with Special Delivery 2K23, part of Mustache Makeover. We've got both of our colors and some early action. We'll keep it. The only part I don't like is opponent going first. Alright, they're not making good use of that. We will start with our Kumano Faces Kakazan, which is, again, pretty reminiscent of those hidden creatures. Well, the original deck had some enchantments that could turn into creatures under the right conditions. And so that's what we're going for here, is a Saga that eventually flips into a creature. And in the meantime, it's going to buff up our stuff as it comes into play. So we get a 4-2. And our opponent, for some reason, just tossed a Surge of Salvation to give themselves hexproof until end of turn and prevent all damage that would be dealt this turn, but we didn't have haste, we didn't attack. You didn't have to do that, opponent. Oh, alright. Maybe they're just letting us know that they've got it. I think this time we will go with our Sprinter. Gets to put oil counters wherever we want him. I guess we'll just put him on himself, right? I mean, they don't actually change his power or toughness. It just means that now he doesn't bounce back to our hand at the end of the turn. Well, not this turn. I guess those counters come off, and the next turn he will. So this guy just kind of keeps bouncing in and out. All right, opponent with Adeline. That's fine. Canker Bloom doesn't really help us here. Can't afford our Defiler of Vigor yet, and Wary Thespian will probably come down, but we'll do that second main. We're just going to keep pressure on for right now. I don't expect them to let Adeline die to the Riveteer, so maybe she chumps. Yeah. Okay, opponent down to 3. We're going to get Wary Thespian to set up our next draw. Another Thespian. That's actually fine. And then we'll also do our Canker Bloom, and we're just going as wide as we can, and our opponent gives it up. All right, we got another win in there with our special delivery. So what's that total? Like 2 and 2? Okay, so I'm happy with that. We'll stop there at a 50-50 win rate. Let's take one more look at the deck and wrap things up. Okay, final thoughts on today's Mustache Makeover for special delivery and Urza's Saga pre-constructed deck from October of 1998, brought all the way, just dragged it like 25 years into the future and jammed some games with it. We kept our single giant worm, the Defiler of Vigor. I don't think we ever actually played this guy in our games today. Felt cool to have it in our hand. Burned Down the House, our very expensive board wipe, kind of a... I don't know. I don't know why the original deck would have had a sorcery in it that dealt 4 damage to all of our own creatures. I feel like if you have an aggressive deck, you either should have won the game already, or this should have been like another creature or burn or something to deal those last few points of damage. I mean, you don't want to kill any of your own stuff, and if your opponent has been outnumbering you creature-wise all game already anyway, this probably doesn't get you back into that fight. So if I was truly upgrading the original deck instead of just replicating it, I think I would have cut Burn Down the House and maybe gone with something else here, maybe doubled up on my Defilers of Vigor, or maybe some more evolved Spinoderms, because those guys do kind of fit the theme of the original deck. A 4-mana 5/5 that has some combination of trample or hexproof, depending on the oil counters on it. And then you could also feed it more oil counters with something like Magmatic Sprinter, so there's a nice little synergy there. So that kind of top end felt fine, but most of our gameplay was down in the 1s and 2s. Free from Flesh is kind of a sneaky one to hit on your Evolving Adaptive. Just gives you a nice chunky boy as early as turn 2. You can get in for 5 damage. That felt pretty good, but I mean, you don't need multiples of these clogging up your hand. Hammerhand was, again, trying to replicate some of the cheap auras from the original deck. Probably could take this out, although, I mean, giving something like Defiler haste, unexpectedly, I guess, could be good, but very rarely did we have the extra mana or the extra cards in hand to make that work. So I would probably drop that. This is one of the better sagas in Standard at the moment. Probably could go up to 3 or 4 copies of this, maybe replace Hammerhand for sure. Getting that free point of damage in and making our every other creature on the next turn, the next creature spell that turn rather, bigger is great value. And then you still get a 2/2 with haste with the relevant ability as well. All good. Play with Fire, just a cheap little bit of interaction, and if you need to throw it to the face to get those last points of damage in to steal a win, absolutely, that's fine. Audacity, kind of, again, reminds me of Rancor from back in the day, but this is like a fixed version because you don't get the enchantment back, you just draw a new card every time, or the time, but still really good. It's evocative of that era of Magic, so I really like it, and I think it worked great with a lot of our overstated creatures who maybe didn't quite have trample, getting your evolving adaptive up to like a 4/4, 5/5, and then slapping this on it to really punch in there feels pretty good. Tamiyo's Safekeeping, just a couple of tricks up our sleeve to keep some of our guys alive. They tend to be magnets for removal, gaining 2 life. I mean, I guess that's also relevant in the right matchup, but a single Flame Discharge. This is, again, to closely echo the X damage spell found in the original deck. I tried to keep it as close as possible whenever I could do a 1-for-1 upgrade or transfer over. That original deck also had some spells for blowing up artifacts, and I think maybe something for enchantments as well. So a Braid kind of helps us out in a couple different ways, right? It can remove a chump blocker that would otherwise stop our impressive adaptive, or if we need to pick off some annoying artifact that's in our way, we can do that. Kami's Flare works really well with the theme of the deck. I mean, this is one of those kind of subtle synergies that maybe isn't quite apparent when you're a brand new player, but those oil counters counting as counters, which makes the Kami's Flare do its modified bonus. That's just really, really great. I love that these are from sets that came out a year apart and or more than a year apart, I guess, and they have that overlap. That's a really clever design for standard. Requisitioner mostly was in here for yet another hasty threat with a high power, and he evolves our adaptive when you follow him up, turn 1 into turn 2, so that's good. Cankerbloom can proliferate all of our oil counters everywhere or destroy artifacts, enchantments, and it's just a 2-mana 3/2, which would have blown kids' minds in 1998, right? You couldn't get a 3/2 for 2 with 3 useful abilities that you could trade it in for. That's just like all-around value. The Thespians, again, for some reason I was just hooked on 3 power and for 2 mana. It just felt like that's where we wanted to be, to get damage across as fast as we could, and being able to surveil and set up our following draws. I mean, we were a pretty low curve, so we didn't want to find too many lands, so this felt like a good way to avoid drawing too many lands. And then the Yavimaya Iconoclasts, I almost feel like maybe a third one of these would have been warranted. Again, a 2-mana 3/2, punching above its weight class, and for just 1 more red you get a 4/3 with trample and haste. That's pretty good. So and then so our mid range, we have a couple of 3-drops, right? Giant Cindermaw, again, 4 power for 3 mana, felt great. And then the Sprinter just kind of bounces around, and he can either improve your Spinoderms or your adaptives or go where he's needed. So overall, I tried to stick to the same number of rares. We only had the 2 rares. I tried to keep the land spread about the same. I tried to keep the color balance about the same. And the whole point of this deck was to echo the deck built around Echo. We're kind of built around oil counters, not entirely. I mean, there's other cards that certainly would have fit that theme a little better. But in terms of having really aggressive starts and cards that kind of snowball into each other and kind of have that I might not be here next turn kind of thing going on with them, I thought that was pretty fun. And overall, I would say this is a moderately successful Mustache Makeover. Probably not quite as good as the previous one. Widowmaker, I think, performed a bit better. But I might keep tinkering with this. The trick is to resist the temptation to just copy an existing red-green oil deck or the mono-green Defiler deck. I mean, there are other decks like that in Standard already. I like looking to the past, finding something that worked then, and kind of sanding it off and seeing what we can do with that idea in Standard today. If you like that, let me know down in the comments. Tell me what you think about this deck. What cards would you change? Should I try to keep this formula going forward? Should I try to limit myself to the same number of rares, for example? I mean, I cheated here. I added 1 more, but should we just say, hey, sky's the limit, take that idea and go as far as you can, or try to build a new theme deck, starter deck, whatever, using today's resources, but, yesterday's economy, if we want to look at it that way? Let me know down in the comments. While you're there, check out that link for Into the AM. Make sure you pick out your perfect pack of shirts. Use promo code Magic Arcanum. Save 10% when you do it. And then make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the great stories you'll only find here on Magic Arcanum. We'll see ya.